Hello, welcome. My name is Dr. Lauren Farovich. I am male, Caucasian. I'm currently wearing a black polo t-shirt as well as signing in front of a gray background. First, we'll start with a welcome and introduction. Then we'll review a brief history of New York City and New York State open data. Then we'll give an overview of New York City open data. We will show you how to use the web platform as well as the filtering open data and visualizing open data. We'll have a brief overview of New York State open data before going into tools that utilize open data. And lastly, we'll share ways for you to stay involved. The material of this training was created by the civic technology organization BetaNYC and refined by the Office of Data Analytics and the New York City Office of Technology and Innovation, or OTI. Defining open data can be quite simple, making government data accessible and clear to the public. Open data is often thought of as a 21st century phenomenon, one that accompanies the growing importance of data in our everyday lives and stems from the increased creation of use of that data by governments. Those are both in New York and around the world. There is a long history of similar efforts to make government more accountable and transparent. To better understand how we got here, we're going to briefly touch on some developments that led to New York open data. Before we go into the past, let's start with today. What does open data look like today? Public data is available about nearly every facet of city life. This is an illustration of some of New York's open data that shows how the physical environment maps to open data datasets. For every paved street, recycling bin, parking ticket, or restaurant inspection, there's data points available. Did you check the weather today? Or use a navigation or location-aware app recently? If yes, then you've used open data. Most folks use open data without even knowing it. Most weather forecasts, really no matter the app, come from the open data from the National Weather Service, www.weather.gov. The roots of open data movement, especially in New York City, can actually be traced back to good government efforts that date back to at least the late 1800s and the progressive era of government reform. In New York City, these progressive reforms created a new government newspaper to share city notices and updates. This newspaper, called the City Record, publicized things like what city agencies are looking to buy, who they've recently hired, and what public meetings are about to happen. The City Record has proven so useful that it is still being published today. It is both in print and online. Government information, of course, goes beyond these updates on daily business. Jumping some decades ahead to the 1960s and 70s, freedom of information legislation, known as FOIA or FOIL, was passed by the federal government and also by state governments, including in New York. FOIL made government information available by request. If you knew what you were looking for, you could go ahead and ask for it. And if the information exists, then it could be shared, and it would be shared specifically with you. In some cases, the now public records are shared more widely. Published in an article, for example, but often the only person to ever see the records is the requester. With FOIL, most government information is available if someone asks for it. At the time, it was a very revolutionary concept. You can see here an example of the kind of information that was ultimately made public after the Freedom of Information requests. Documents from the FBI's investigation into Martin Luther King Jr. One of the challenges with filing Freedom of Information requests is that you don't know what you don't know. You can't put in a request for something if you're not aware of its existence. In 1993, New York City released its public data directory in an effort to start solving this problem. This directory made a subset of the information available through FOIL, information stored as data. It became more accessible by providing a listing of what data agencies have. Someone could now see a listing of what data was available at each agency, read a description of what it contained, and use that knowledge to help inform their FOIL requests. Interestingly, some of the systems and databases outlined in this directory actually still exist today. By 2012, advocates, city staff, and elected officials all came together to pass New York City's open data law. While many cities have open data as a policy or an executive order, New York City's law guarantees that the public will have access to this information in perpetuity, regardless of administration. A key difference between open data and FOIL is that no one needs to ask for the information. Anything meeting the definition of this law is required to be made public by default, and thus shared with everyone on the New York City Open Data website. Subsequently, in 2013, New York State signed Executive Order 95, launching the state's official open data website. Today, the state's data portal is at data.ny.gov and hosts over 1,400 items from 62 state agencies and authorities, including data provided by the City Open Data Platform. Now I'll walk you through how to find open data sets and basic navigation through the New York City Open Data website. Here is the New York City Open Data website. You can access it at newyorkcitynyc.gov/open data. Users can enter search terms in the lookup bar or by clicking Data in the top navigation. If you just want to browse, you can also look at the Data tab. Data sets are grouped in a number of different ways: by agency, category, most popular, or newest. Let's look at a specific data set by typing 311 in the search bar. 311 is a New York City government resource for assistance and general information for non-emergency situations. It's open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and available in over 175 languages and for roughly 3,600 government services. 311 is accessible via phone, website, Skype, Twitter, Facebook, and mobile apps. How many trash complaints are in Queens, Community District 01 on July 4th, 2025? Let's look at the 311 dataset. When you search for data, you will get back a list of results. For this 311 exercise, the top result for 311 service requests is the dataset that we want. Next, I will show you how to read a dataset and what questions to ask yourself before opening it. When you get your first dataset, you will see the primer page. This page gives you beneficial information about the data, which is called metadata. Metadata is a term that means data about the data. New York City has a data set of trees, where every row in the database is a different tree. But if I want data about this data set, like what agency it's from or when it was last updated, that is all metadata. Closely reviewing the description of the data set is helpful to understand if you've indeed found the information you're looking for. Sometimes the differences between similar data sets can be subtle. For example, there are data sets of 311 data from before 2010 that won't show us the information we're looking for. The information highlighted here will show us when the dataset and its related metadata was last updated. The purpose of an open data dictionary is to take the complexity of the city government operation and the dataset that covers and translates it for the public. Understanding the data in the context of what's presented in the data dictionary is important. So you should review the data and the data dictionary side by side. The data dictionary gives you a description of each column in the dataset, since sometimes the column names are not always self-explanatory. It can contain notes to further explain the details of how this data is created and used. Be sure to have a look at the expected values in the fields you may want to use in order to explore the data. Knowing the terms to search for or how values are written in the data really helps when it's time to filter. Most computers and computer programs won't be able to access open data. For example, Microsoft Excel will only load about 1 million rows. If you have a large data set with lots of rows, it will take a long time to download and consume lots of storage space. On New York City Open Data, it's easy to filter down a large data set like 311 to only show the information you're most interested in, and to download that smaller portion of the data. We'll show you how to do that shortly. Here's a summary of the questions you should ask yourself as you look into using new data. Read the title and description. Is this the data I'm looking for? Check when the data was last updated. Is this data sufficiently current? Review the data documentation. Do I understand this data set well enough to start using it? Evaluate the size of the data set. Is this data set too large for me to use as is? Now that we have a sense of the data set's context, let's take a look at the data itself and how to filter open data. How to filter open data. This is what the data looks like. Over 30 million rows and over 40 columns. In the bottom right corner of the screen, you can see showing rows 1 to 100 of 32,914,671. This is too much to work with, so we will want to filter our data to make it more manageable. This is way too much to work with, so we want to filter our data to make it more manageable. Click the filter icon. Add your filter operators. Community Board IS01 Queens. Click the Apply button below, and this will reduce the size of the file. When you first initiate a filter, there will be a brief delay as the entire dataset loads in the backend of your use. The 311 dataset is exceptionally large, so this may take a while. When the initial loading is completed, filtering, grouping, and aggregating will all become much quicker. Let's add more filters. Created data is greater than 2025 January 1st, 12 a.m. And Community Board IS1 of 01 Queens and Agency IS1 of DSNY. Click Apply. You will now see all 311 calls made in Queens Community Board 1 after January 1st, 2025, assigned to the Department of Sanitation, otherwise known as DSNY. Keep in mind to truly get every possible record at the beginning of the year, 2025, you need to look up records created after December 31st, 2024 at 11:59. 311 is retrospective data and only shows requests from yesterday and older. Today's request will be available tomorrow. How to group and aggregate. On the left side of the web page under the filter, you can toggle the grouping and aggregation panel. Sort your aggregation by clicking the three dots on the right of the screen and opening up the menu. To get a snapshot of how many different complaint types there were in Queens CB01 after January 1st, 2025, assigned to the Department of Sanitation, DSNY, group by complaint, type, and aggregate by count of rows. You can also download your newly filtered dataset. Simply click on the Export button at the top and choose your file type. What if you want to look at a chart or a graph of this data? If you download the data to your computer, you can do that in Excel or Google Sheets. If you want to explore a data set graphically, you can also easily create a visualization without downloading anything or leaving the open data site. To visualize a data set, click the Action button at the top of the primer page. Scroll down to Visualize, then click Create Visualization. This will take you to the Configure Visualization page. In the visualization page, apply your filters first. This panel on the right of the screen allows you to select a filter. For 311, it's best to start with a date filter. By default, you will be required to choose between two dates, but you can change that. You can actually toggle between multi-date or single date selection. After you apply the filters, your row count should be smaller to reflect the filtered down dataset. It's always suggested that you first filter the data down to a manageable size before applying visualizations. Filtering down the data initially causes the entire dataset to load in the background. It takes some time at first, but it makes other actions faster. After you've applied your filter, think about how you want to group and visualize your data. Choose a dimension from the dropdown based on what you want to group by. In this case, we want to see a pie chart of total number of complaints on July 4th, 2025. We want to see it grouped by borough. So we go ahead and choose borough for the dimension. We can specify the specific number of slices we want to see in the graph. Here is our final visualization. A pie chart of 311 inquiries created on 7/4/2025, broken down based on borough. You'll be able to create a variety of chart types and then filter the data set. For a quick recap as to how we got here, first, we applied our filter to filter down the 311 complaints only created on 7/4/2025. Then we chose the pie chart type. Thirdly, we chose our dimension to be borough, since we wanted it to be grouped by borough. Choose 5 slices, so we see only boroughs and not any of the inquiries that fall under unknown. Or for another example, view different types of complaints on a bar chart. You can even use this visualization tool to see this data on a map. Now I'll walk you through how to find open data sets and basic navigation through the New York State Open Data website. Here is the New York State Open Data Program page. You can access it at www.ny.gov/programs/open-ny. Users can enter search terms in the lookup bar or by clicking Catalog at the top of navigation. To do some more general browsing, click through some of the data categories or click the search icon to search by key terms. Users can enter search terms in the lookup bar or by choosing a category to explore. Recently published Open Data New York items. If we search alternative fuel stations in New York, we will see the data sets appear, similar to the New York City Open Data portal. Alternative fuel stations in New York. From there, you can dive into that data. Let's compare New York City Open Data to Data New York. City data versus state data. Different URLs for their respective websites. Data from city agencies versus data from state agencies, including state contracted corporations, such as the MTA. New York State Open Data includes city data sets within it. New York City Open Data is operated by the Open Data team at the New York City Office of Technology and Innovation, OTI, while New York State Open Data is operated by the New York State Office of Information Technology Services, or ITS. Need help navigating open data? To ask a question or report an error on open data, contact the New York City Open Data Help Desk by clicking Contact Us or by visiting the website opendata.cityoFnewYork.us/engage/. You'll get assistance from the person or agency that manages the data that you're using. If you can't find the data you're looking for, you can request a data set. If there's data that meets the definition of New York City Open Data, the agency that manages it will be required to respond with the data when the data will be made available or a public explanation of why it cannot be shared. Do you need support on the New York State portal? For support navigating New York State Open Data, click Help. You'll get access to quick video guides, browser support information, and navigation tips. Civic Innovation Lab and Radar. The City Innovation Lab is where BetaNYC addresses civic challenges with government agencies and community-based organization using data, technology, and design. The goal is to support the use of open data and technology throughout New York City offices. If you have open data questions or require a higher level of analysis on a certain product that is not in your wheelhouse, the Beta New York City Lab is a community help desk that can support with your open data inquiries. Submit a radar, research, and data assistance request at beta.nyc. Have open data related questions? I want to know where things are. In the interest of time, let's look at a common question about mapping. I want to know where things are. Is there mapped open data on where resources are located? Can I add to these maps? nyc.gov/maps hosts maps and tools created by city agencies to make their data more accessible to the public. Many of these tools have matching open data sets. Here you can see a few, like the Mitigation Action Map and the New York City Street Map. OpenStreetMap is essentially a Wikipedia map of the world that anyone can view, edit, and contribute to. Anyone can also export and use this data. You can add nearly anything to OSM: a water fountain, a local clinic, or even your favorite park. Additions are as detailed as you want them to be, including size, width, and even opening hours. OSM data is used by a variety of stakeholders, from Google to Lyft to the MTA. Completely community-led, and data quality is preserved via peer review. Created by BetaNYC, Boundaries Map is a tool for viewing and querying overlapping New York City administrative boundaries. Governmental bodies divide the city in different ways. It's important to know where the governmental boundaries overlap in order to solve issues collaboratively in a district. Stay involved. Here are ways to stay involved with New York Open Data. Mapping for Equity is a civics and data literacy program that teaches the public how to see data while collecting data on New York City's undermapped and underrepresented public spaces. This includes collecting data on all of the many public use amenities we find in our parks, playgrounds, and public housing, such as the location of benches, street lamps, trash cans, blind accessible curve cuts that have tactile pavement, and also wheelchair accessible play equipment. These features are mapped as individual data points on OSM. It's a project we've created that combines our passion for open data advocacy and OpenStreetMap. Attend a mapping equity event. Map public amenity outdoors on field papers. Join us indoors to add features to OSM. Create open data anyone can use. The website beta.nyc/link. Open Data Week, an annual festival of community-driven events about New York City open data workshops produced by the New York City Open Data Team and Beta New York City. It includes events ranging from workshops, panels, showcases, to data-informed art, data scavenger hunts, and data collecting expeditions. School of Data is Beta NYC's in-person conference during Open Data Week that brings folks together to learn in a jam-packed day. City Camp NYC is coming at the end of September 2025. It will be an unconference where attendees decide the agenda and the topics important to them. They come together to brainstorm solutions and to address challenges New Yorkers face. Thank you for joining me on this Introduction to New York Open Data class. Reach out to BetaNYC at classes@beta.nyc with any questions.